Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world. My name is Dr. DAAM, and this is Dr. DAAM Podcast, episode 12 on crime or crime. This is also the Society Podcast. A couple names. I have, I call it the Mom and Pop Podcast if you're new to the listeners. You may be listening now in the present day of December 1st, 2024, or you'll be listening in December 31st, 2025, or maybe 10 years from now. So, hello from the past and hello to the future. So, today I want to talk about crime. If you've been following the news, especially December 1st today, you discovered the fact that President Joe Biden has pardoned his son, Hunter Biden, for gun charges for when he was under the influence of drugs. He bought a gun, claiming he was not on the influence of drugs, checking off on a document, and he was charged for that crime. He was also charged for tax-related crimes also, and President Biden pardoned him from 2014 up until December 1st, 2024. On the other side, President Trump pardoned his, I don't know what you call your daughter's father-in-law. Maybe it's your co-father-in-law. I don't know. But he pardoned him back in 2021, right before he left office. A guy named Charles Kushner, Jared Kushner's father. And Charles Kushner had some wild crimes, such as with his tampering, getting a prostitute to have relations with his brother or someone else who he was trying to influence. Some other stuff he did, which is very high crimes, and he's charged by Chris Christie back in 2005 for these crimes. He went to jail for a significant period of time, and President Trump pardoned him in 2021. And President Trump recently appointed him to be ambassador for France. So, in my mind, the president, based on his Article 2 powers, has the right to, based on his or her Article 2 powers, has a right to pardon whoever they want. There's a possibility, there's a situation where you could even pardon yourself as a president, which has never been tested, but may be tested in the future, we don't know. But these are crimes these folks committed, and they were pardoned. I understand why they're pardoned. A father pardons his son. A person pardons a family member. I may disagree with that reasoning, pardoning and so forth, but I understand. Because if I always tell a few friends of mine, if I had a challenge situation, that child had not committed murder, be a traitor or whatever to the country and so forth, I may consider pardoning them. Because I had the power to do so, and that's a real thing. So we must always be able to look with clear-eyed at how we would act in certain situations, even if we may disagree with the actions of others. We cannot be hypocrites. Hypocrisy is one of the great sins of our society, and it's what caused a lot of dysfunction across the board. The fact that folks say one thing and then do the other, or they tolerate something in someone else but don't tolerate the same thing in others. So there's a lack of consistency in behavior. It's always called cognitive dissonance. Attitude versus behavior. Your attitude is X, but your behavior is Y. So that's essentially what hypocrisy is, and we've got to call it out when we see it. We've got to acknowledge it exists within us. And therefore, as human beings, we've got to live in a truthful manner. The fact that we are by nature make hypocritical choices or hypocritical decisions when our own interests are, in front of us and so forth, or when a friend's interest is in front of us. But when it comes to an enemy or an ally or enemy or someone we don't have a relation to, we have a different perspective, and that lack of consistency is a problem in our society. Now, that's one piece right there. But I want to talk about crime. Crime is, and is a negative activity in our society. It harms the society. Whether it's a small crime, whether it's a big crime. Actually, let me rephrase that. Big crimes truly harm our society. Small crimes can be, ameliorated. People can be, you know, retrained and said, hey, don't do this again. Make sure or they're fined, and so forth. But those who commit crimes of murder, crimes of passion, or betray their countries, commit mass shootings, commit grand larceny, drive while intoxicated and kill someone. Those are big time crimes. So crimes are sadly part of society, which should not be part of our society at all. But it's been within our society since the dawn of mankind leaving the savannas. In the Bible they talk about Cain and Abel, how Cain struck Abel over jealousy for their sister or whatever, Adam and Eve's progeny. And, that's the first major crime that was ever committed, a crime of passion, a crime of jealousy, and so forth. But crimes have been part of our society since biblical times, since, as I just said before, when the Homo sapiens left Africa, or even when they were in Africa, crimes have been part of our society. But it should not be part of society. It should not be part of society. There are narratives out there that we must accept crime to a certain level because it's reality. No, that should not be accepted. What I mean by crime, I mean violent crime. I mean somebody, breaking into a liquor store or something. We should accept that as a normative stuff. And no, not at all. Should not accept that. People, coming to the country illegally, that's considered a crime. Should they be hounded down and prosecuted to any degree? I think we should figure out a way to help those people find a way to a brighter future. Either return them back to their country in a safe and secure manner, or provide them with some kind of paperwork to ensure the fact they can be loyal members of society, continue to contribute to our society in a positive manner, pay taxes, and live the American dream, or live the British dream, or live the Canadian dream, or live the Mexican dream, or whatever dream they want to live, as long as it's a positive dream, absent of a life of crime. Crime in the United States have fallen significantly in the last 4 years. We saw a precipitous rise in 2020, 2019 into 2020. We can attribute that maybe to the COVID-19 pandemic, all these other factors that were in play. But we've seen a rapid fall in crime throughout the last 4 years. We are sitting at historical levels of limited crime, low-level crime and so forth, based on FBI statistics. I can't quote it to you right now, but the data is out there. The fact that we are in a period where crime is lower at lower levels. Is it still in existence? Yes. We see it all the time on TV because that's what TV like to cover. The most recent criminal activity versus the goodness of people doing great things on behalf of society. And it's a reality that we all face, that the fact that we always put in our face that crime is happening and it's all pervasive when it's really not. And that's a factor that goes into a lot of decision making of policymakers and the voters. I remember having a discussion with a guy when I was visiting Indiana. Was it about a year and a half ago? And he mostly sees a lot of developments on television in terms of crime happening in New York City. I live in the New York City metro area. I had to tell him I don't see the same things you see living there. Um, is it pervasive as what you're quoting? No. Does it happen? Yes, but the chance of happening is very low. It's a relatively safe city in terms of the fact we have one of the largest police forces in the world. Thank you to cops out there who are doing all the right things. Thank you to the emergency first responders, the firefighters, the paramedics, and so forth. You guys do a great job. Kudos. Thank you to where I live. Thank you to the first responders and the cops where I live also too for keeping us safe. What you guys do on a daily basis, a lot of people can't do. So I truly appreciate it. I know the guys who will follow me in the future truly appreciate what you all do, helping to minimize the violence out there that may occur in our society, and that's major kudos to you all for being steadfast in your duty, honoring your oath, and continue to progress forward. So, with that said, that's the crime at, I would say, the lower levels of our society, and there's other crimes we got to talk about. There's corruption. I talked about that earlier, but mostly so corruption. In a previous podcast, I think it was podcast number 2, when I first started out. It's been 3 weeks since I first started out, so I'm into my third week. Started 11/11/2024. Now it's December 1st, 2024. So it's been about a good 3 weeks. 12. This is podcast 12, so I've done 12 episodes in those 20 days. So that's pretty good numbers. I was hoping to do, one a day, but life happens to you fast. You got to be very engaged with other requirements. When you can squeeze a podcast in, you can squeeze it in. But speaking of crimes at the highest levels, corruption happens in our society. What that means is the fact that folks trade favors for X, Y, and Z, and it becomes a quid pro quo. And it's not usually obvious because there's so much obfuscation in terms of how these things are handled that is not seen until the FBI or the Department of Justice or some other foreign entity starts to investigate in their country, and FBI investigates in our country, or some other high level law enforcement begins to investigate or tipped off that this is happening. And those are the crimes that really truly sometimes impact society, because those people who are making these choices to act in a manner that is adverse to our society is stealing from our society. They're stealing the wealth from our society. They're making a decision to fleece our society for their own benefit. And those are the hardest crimes to prove, because people are very good at masking their activities. For example, you pay a donor pays you for your campaign, and in turn you go and make a decision on behalf of that donor. That's technically a crime, but it's very hard to be proved based on how the law is structured. There's no clear cut like the Bob Menendez of the world, the former senator here, the former New Jersey senator, who essentially were working with some Turkish folks to get them something. I forgot the true story, but they were paying him in gold bars. That's a crime. That's bribery. Because no one else, the vast majority of the U.S. population, or the vast majority of his state population, 99% of them will not get that level of access to him. Where he makes a decision that benefits one guy or one group, but steals from the other 99% or 99.9%. And that's the kind of crime that is, from my perspective, more pervasive in our society, but is not covered as much because people in power have the ability to mask their activities. I would say 99% of people in power are doing the right thing. Is that 1% that's not doing the right thing? And we got to call it out because their actions can cause our society to lose billions in wealth. And the billions in wealth translate down to folks on the ground who need that for their own sustenance. The average voter, the average person who are looking to survive the next day because someone is fleecing them in a manner that they're not aware, or fleecing their society. It becomes a negative externality on them because the resources are not there to help them progress, help their families progress. I know you all thought I would talk about crime in terms of violent crime and so forth. That was the first part of the podcast, but this is more about crime in a manner that actually impacts the macro society. And I think by now, the viewers and listeners should understand, I really focus on the macro society. I don't focus too much on the micro society. I will let other podcasts do that. Because I'm a kind of a big picture kind of person, big picture kind of guy. And I like to look at things at a more vast level. That's my personality. That's how I think. That's how I process information. And that's how I convey information to audiences. Can I talk about the minutia as necessary? Yes. But is that something I want to do? I like to do? No, not really. I really like to focus on the bigger picture because that is where I'm best at. That's where my strength lies. And helping you understand how someone's activity at the highest levels of society have a ripple effect down to the lowest levels is much more productive than me talking about someone jumping a turnstile in New York City that's, cost $275 based on a person jumping the turnstile, when someone at the highest levels of our society is making millions, billions, when those millions and billions can help to uplift our society in the millions, which means the fact that millions of people depend on those kind of resources that someone is fleecing from our society. Is it constant? No. If it was constant, we would be in a world of hurt. Is it impactful? Yes, when it happens, these crimes. And we must be cognizant of those crimes because they're happening in front of us. When a leader makes a decision that we know is morally, ethically wrong, and we still co-sign on it, you're basically saying yes to crimes, because a moral or ethical decision that may not be legally wrong or illegal can at some point in time fall into the realm of illegality, and that person's remit will impact a vast parts of society. And until we acknowledge that that's a problem, and we stop turning a blind eye to these kind of realities, a lot of part of our society is going to suffer. And when we talk about crime, it's always sometimes about how it makes people suffer. But it's always about suffering at the lowest levels versus suffering being brought down from the highest levels onto the lowest levels. And that's a paradigm we have to change. We cannot let people make immoral and unethical decisions that will eventually go into illegal decisions or illegal actions and consider it normative. We should not be allowed that stuff. We should not tolerate that kind of behavior. That's how folks like Bob Menendez get caught up, and that's what other folks who are in our government, who are leaders in industry get caught up because we tolerate that kind of behavior. We turn a blind eye to it. We should never turn a blind eye to those kind of behaviors because they can eventually turn into criminal actions. And criminal actions have a way of taking from our society, taking the wealth, taking the treasure from our society, and thus we must condemn those actions. We must try to stop those actions. Thank you for your time. This is Dr. DAAM, Dr. DAAM at the Dr. DAAM Podcast, episode 12 on crime. Please like and subscribe to my podcast. I look forward to the next episode. Thank you very much.